Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruben Collins. I'm president of the Charles County Board of Commissioners. I'm also the chair of the Council of Government Board of Directors. I'd like to officially call to order our February meeting. I want to start by thanking Metro for your continued partnership and for hosting our meeting today. We'd like to begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Clark is now the color guard.
Right.
I think you need to make
Yeah, no, you need to see it.
Oh, I'm good. I'm like Bad Bunny. Let's go. Come on. All right, go.
This is the one.
Like the Super Bowl. Let's go. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So again, good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to start today's meeting by recognizing any new board members here with us today. And this is an opportunity, if you could, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Dufour Wolfley. I'm with the City of Bowie. I'm the acting mayor and mayor pro tem. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Any other new members? Thank you and welcome to our meeting. Secondly, as we look to the year ahead, I want to make sure every board meeting is a positive and engaging use of your time, focused on issues important to you and your communities. The Executive Committee recently met to review agenda items for this upcoming year. We have an outstanding roster of subject areas. However, it's extremely important that the agenda remain fluid, ready to respond to important issues that arise. So if you have any ideas that you'd like to discuss on a regional level, I encourage you to share your suggestions on potential agenda topics, guest speakers, or programs you'd like to see discussed. Your suggestions will help ensure that the board discussions are aligned with our regional priorities and current challenges being faced at the local level. So please, if you have any ideas, big or small, I encourage you to share those ideas with me or COG staff. The next item on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report. And Mr. Mercer, if you could.
All right, thank you, Chair. I'll be brief today, but a couple, I think, really good updates for the region. The first, would like to highlight that last week we had Governor Moore, Governor Spanberger, and Mayor Bowser met in the district. Mayor Bowser hosted the two governors. We were pretty instrumental behind the scenes encouraging that meeting to occur and helped with the agenda for it. That is the first time in over 4 years that the three principals have sat together to talk about regional issues, which is the start of a very good, I'm hopeful, relationship. And a few agenda items that I know were on that. One was a commitment for the three principals to meet again. I know next month they're meeting with a group of business leaders, and then we're looking for June for something more public, partnering with the Board of Trade, the Greater Washington Partnership, and the consortium of colleges. But items that were discussed, one, were here at Metro's building, and certainly Transit Metro was discussed. Talent Capital, which has been an initiative that COG has worked on with the governors and mayor the last year to be responsive to our federal workforce and contractors and those looking for work in the region. And we'll get that to our legislative update, but there is joint funding proposals sitting in Annapolis and Richmond to continue that initiative. The issue of ticket reciprocity, which we have talked about as a board for many years, was discussed, and fingers crossed that there is positive movement on that moving forward. So legislative updates, a big shout out to Kayla and to Monica and to all of you who have spent time in Annapolis and in Richmond testifying on different bills. In our legislative package, we do have a couple budget amendments that COG is actively supporting. One is to fund talent capital, which is that joint workforce initiative, to the tune of $600,000 over the next 2 years, with each state providing $200,000 dollars for that. And the second is ticket reciprocity. In Maryland, there is legislation that MDOT is pushing that would be permissive of localities entering into ticket reciprocity agreements. And there is a bill in Virginia that would put money to the DMV and direct them to work with COG between now and this fall to put options on the table for how Virginia could enter into ticket reciprocity agreements. And both of those initiatives in Virginia are supported by the Spanberger administration, and those amendments are actively being discussed right now. We also talked about this at our summer retreat and discussed it at our last meeting. We do have some help in both capitals. So Procter & Associates is Prince George's Maryland-based lobby firm out of Maryland that's helping us in Annapolis. And in Virginia, for pro bono for the rest of the session, is a firm, Kemper Consulting, that is helping with those amendments and our transit funding. On DMV moves, we have been very active in working around the region to get support for the resolution that the COG board passed. And I'm happy to report, if you look here, this is a, and I know Mr. Donahue is going to love to hear this, this is a unanimous support for the DMV moves resolution in Virginia, Arlington County, Fairfax, Loudoun, City of Alexandria, City of Fairfax, City of Falls Church, and City of Manassas. Each of those boards passed the DMV moves resolution unanimously. And in Maryland, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, City of College Park, City of Greenbelt, and City of Rockville all have unanimously passed the funding recommendations around DMV moves. The Metropolitan, COG has done that, NVTA, NVTC, and obviously WMATA. Now here's kind of the ask of everyone around the dais today. Having these localities pass the DMV moves resolution is great, and the folks that are tuned in to the monthly meeting see that, but that doesn't necessarily get to the ears of our delegates and senators in Annapolis. And so if you could please remind your senators and delegates that your local jurisdiction, along with every Metro Compact jurisdiction, has unanimously approved this. The legislation is moving. It's sponsored by Senator Augustine in Maryland and Delegate Corman. Kayla just provided testimony yesterday on Delegate Corman's bill, so that is working its way through the process. In Virginia, the bills are likely going to be foregone, and the legislators are going to work to get that money in the state budget. And so now is really the time, particularly since the session is quicker in Virginia, to be in touch with your delegates and senators to remind them of your support and encourage them to include the funding in the state budget. HUD funding, a quick update. That was a big topic at our last board meeting, and some concern that money would lapse for all of our programs dealing with the unhoused and homelessness. And Hillary provided a great update that since our last meeting. One, we provided letter on behalf of all of the board to our CODEL pointing out this issue and the need for appropriations. There is an enacted appropriation that includes provisions that will get the money moving. With lawsuits and pauses at the federal level, there's still some concern that that money might not be delivered in time, but it's very good news, and we're hopeful that that money will be delivered in time and services won't be interrupted. You have in your packet our annual member benefits and annual report. That member benefits is a really good document to give to your fellow council members or supervisors when folks are not entirely certain all of the things that COG does. This is a great summary of all of the services that COG provides, and I thank the comms team and all of our policy folks for helping pull that together. And the last piece, if you did not see it, it's pretty notable. It's done every few years, which is our State of the Commute, and that's a survey from 7,500 different folks. It got a fair amount of press this year because a lot of folks are back in the office. Definitely establishes that hybrid is more the norm, but folks are back more than they're working from home, and that is certainly something that the press picked up on. And in terms of working from home or being in the office, I will point out we're not in our office, which I think everyone is aware of this, but our offices are under renovation. So all the demolition has been completed, and the 2 floors are down basically to the studs, and we will be back in this summer. We'll have a great ribbon cutting when that happens. And if anyone wants to come by and check it out and check out the progress, we will snap some photos and share them, but the work is progressing nicely. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Murphy? Yes. Snell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spent the last 2 hours clomping around in the woods over on the C&O Canal by Lock 10, where the massive sewage spill took place. And number one, I promise you, I rinsed off my boots before I came here. But secondly, Mr. Mercer, I think COG has been a really phenomenal partner with DC Water, for example, with the study last year on second source of our water for the region. But this spill is massive in scale. It is raw sewage that is being dumped into the Potomac River. We had a spill, an overflow that just took place on Sunday of another 600,000 gallons of raw sewage. It is high readings of E. coli, MRSA, staph. It is going to impact all of us as a region because the Potomac River obviously is in Maryland at the district and Virginia. I know that some of our colleagues in Maryland and Virginia, I think, have already issued health and safety warnings for the water. I believe we've had some fishery warnings and closures. I will full well admit the district is actually pretty late to the dance here, and we have not issued warnings, which I'm going to be following up with our executive on. But I do feel like this might be a great opportunity as a region for COG to help convene some of our public health leaders, our environmental leaders. And Mr. Mercer, I didn't know if you have had a chance to look into this issue, or if it's something that you think might be well suited for COG to help convene some conversations for a regional approach. I think this is going to be something we're dealing with well into the spring and early summer as the snow and ice melts, as all of that spillage through snow events and water events is going to keep going into the river. I think we're going to have pretty lasting impacts for a while for people's ability to get out on the water and be able to enjoy and use our river. I will emphasize, our drinking water is safe. And that's important. I think we collectively make sure our residents know drinking water has not been impacted. It is safe to drink our water. But the health and quality, we've already had fish kills that have happened in the river. Really, this is a huge environmental impact and disaster taking place in our river. So, Mr. Mercer, is that something you could or you know about the ability to bring together our health and environmental leaders in the region?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're certainly aware of the issue, and I think getting us engaged and Steve Bieber pulling together counterparts from around the region would make a lot of sense. So why don't I get with Steve and get kind of a game plan for how it would be appropriate for COG to engage and report back to you and the board.
Okay.
And I know it's time sensitive, so we'll do that like very soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Mercer before we move forward? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to see whether there are any amendments directly to today's agenda. Doesn't appear that there are any amendments. So we will move on to the approval of the January 14th meeting minutes. I'd like to move for a motion to approve the minutes from the January 14th meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. The ayes have it. Item number 6 is the consent agenda. We have 6 resolutions on the consent agenda. All of them can be found on page 22 of the board packet. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolutions R12-2026 through R17-2026.
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And/or abstentions? And the ayes have it. The next item on the agenda is the regional coordination and response to January 2026 winter weather. At this time, the board will be briefed on the impacts of last month's snowstorm and the regional response we are still dealing with at this time. The impact of this storm is a reminder for all of us on just how vulnerable we are to major weather events. I wanted to have this conversation today for us to all understand the uniqueness of this storm and why the effects were so impactful throughout the region, despite jurisdictional lines. As we're still experiencing the effects of the storm, this agenda item is not intended as an opportunity to point fingers or to assign blame, because I'm sure there's plenty of blame that could go around. I'd like us to learn more, really focus on best practices, and engage in a conversation that can help prepare for future events. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today that have agreed to brief you. On our panel, we have Eli Russ, COG Senior Public Safety Planner, Kevin Donahue, District of Columbia City Administrator, Rich Madalini, Montgomery County Chief Administrative Officer, John Scrivani, Virginia Department of Emergency Management State Coordinator. We also have Leroy Jones from WMATA, and I thought I saw Mr. Clark here as well. And maybe he walked in and walked out, but we have Mr. Jones, who is here representing WMATA. I'd like all of our panelists to start with brief comments so we can make sure we have ample opportunity for direct conversation and questions from our board members. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Russ to get started by sharing how COG actually coordinates our winter weather plan.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm Eli Russ, the Senior Public Safety Planner at COG's Department of Homeland Security and Public Safety. I manage our Regional Winter Weather Coordination Program, which is led by our department's Managing Director, Scott Boggs. To kick off this panel, I'll be discussing the Regional Winter Weather Plan and our snow call, the process for and tools to support regional decision-making, as well as briefly outline other winter activities by COG. Are you able to advance the slide? There you go. COG annually convenes local, state, and federal decision makers and regional partners to coordinate severe winter weather response in the National Capital Region. This formal program began in 1987 after a major storm highlighted how winter weather can create outsized regional impacts on public safety, transportation, the economy, and the public's well-being. Leaders in DC, Maryland, and Virginia agreed that a common coordinated approach was needed for the region, one built on a shared information, on common operating definitions, and consistent public messaging. Ahead of each winter season, COG hosts a coordination meeting to review the regional plan and share preparations from transportation, transit, and emergency management agencies. This past winter, the meeting brought together approximately 280 participants. When forecasts meet activation thresholds, COG typically convenes a regional coordination call for that evening to share roadway conditions and service impacts. Next slide. COG snow calls follow a standard agenda, beginning with the National Weather Service forecast, followed by transportation and transit updates on mobilization and service levels, and observed and anticipated roadway and rail conditions. The call concludes with any additional updates, questions, or concerns from participants. Agencies provide their updates referencing the picture tables on this and the following slide, so there's a common regional terminology that translates into internal benchmarking and public-facing language. The agencies that formally brief on the COG call are the DC Department of Public Works, DPW, Virginia Department of Transportation, DOT, and Maryland DOT, State Highway Administration, Montgomery County DOT, Prince George's County DPW&T, National Park Service, Metro, including Metro Rail, Bus, and Access, Amtrak, MARC, and VRE. And newly added, Charles County DPW and Frederick County DPW, which now provides us with a more holistic picture of the region. Next slide. Previous slide, please. Thank you. Several hundred government officials participate in these COG calls, including chief administrative officers, public information officers, operations centers, leaders from transportation, fire rescue, emergency management, health and medical, law enforcement, and the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, OPM. To support situational awareness and operational coordination, COG members leverage several regional tools that are used both daily and during winter weather events. The Regional Incident Communication and Coordination System, RICS, is used to distribute snow call notifications, federal operating status updates provided by OPM, and regular operational updates from the region distributed through the NCR Watch Desk, which is housed at DC's Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency. Additional regional resources include the MFU CCTV Security Sharing Program housed by the Maryland Fusion Center, the Regional Integrated Transportation Information System, or RITIS program, housed by the University of Maryland, UMD, and the NCR Geospatial Data Exchange program, housed by Fairfax County. Together, these tools and the information shared on the COG call create a regional common operating picture that supports coordinated, informed regional decision-making. Next slide. Now that we've discussed the COG call, it's important to note that this represents the culmination of a broader regional process focused on roadway maintenance. A key component of that process is the Metropolitan Area Transportation Operations Coordination, or MATOC program, facilitated by Taryn Hutchinson and housed at UMD. MATOC is a joint operations program between the Departments of Transportation for the District, Maryland, Virginia, as well as Metro, to improve interagency information sharing and coordination. To kickstart the regional winter coordination process, MATOC Severe Weather Coordination Working Group and related groups convene internal conference calls, manage email listservs, and share hourly updates to ensure transportation and transit agencies and traffic management centers are operating from the same real-time information. MATOC has also established protocols to coordinate with COG's Regional Public Information Officer Committee during severe winter weather. This graphic illustrates how these aligned regional processes bring many voices together into a single, coordinated regional message. In addition to our public safety work, COG supports government operations, environmental protection, and public messaging through other initiatives. Regional utilities partner with COG's community engagement campaign to raise awareness of winter weather impacts on water resources and infrastructure. In concert, COG works with the U.S. Geological Survey, UMD, and Virginia Tech to monitor salinity in regional waterways and its impact on other contaminants. COG's cooperative purchasing program reduces costs by allowing jurisdictions to leverage combined purchasing power or join existing contracts through the rider clause. The NCR contracts database lists more than 14,000 local government and regional contracts, including for de-icing salt and diesel fuel. Finally, a COG staff member was recently appointed to the TRB Standing Technical Committee on Winter Maintenance and Response to Weather Events, contributing to national and international research and innovation in winter maintenance and weather response. And with that, I thank you for your time today and for the continued collaboration from your jurisdictions and from the partners on this panel in support of the COG Winter Weather Regional Coordination Program. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Thank you, Eli. Excuse me. I don't have any slides. I apologize. So, Mr. Chair and Board, thank you very much for having me today. I think the piece to look at to start this, and I heard Chairman Collins say this in his media interview outside, was National Weather Service deemed this as a catastrophic storm to us as they were watching it approach from Texas. We saw what happened in Mississippi and Tennessee and some of the other states. So that's what we were facing. We were watching this multiple days before because we were seeing those impacts out west. As Executive Director Mercer knows, doing this 3 days into a new governor's administration is probably not the best time as a guy like me to want to do that. But what I will say is, as Governor Spanberger mentioned in her press conference, she gave us over 6 hours to brief her on just this scenario before inauguration. So we walked into the room with her on day one, and she called me an oracle because the scenario that we gave her as an exercise, I actually used the same briefing for this storm. So she blamed me. I jinxed it. But what I will say is we were prepared. Now, this was not a regional northern NCR storm. This was Texas to Boston, right? This was a massive event. And this cold weather, which everybody is outside cheering that it's 50 degrees out, and I'm worried about flooding in Southwest Virginia. So this is not over for any of us yet. But what I will say is, in the lead up to this storm, as Eli outlined, we work statewide, regional. I talked to my partners in North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, as well as Maryland and DC. in our Region 7, VDEM Region 7 works very closely here with the NCR region. So we're wired in with everything that was just outlined. We start really our communications outreach, local governments, other state partners, the federal government, social media with the people of Virginia. We want them to know, but it's also trying to get that message out far and wide so we don't have people trying to travel through the state when we have these impacts. Excuse me. There's also the outreach doing media interviews and getting with our congressional delegation, and I briefed the General Assembly. It's really just trying to bring an awareness to, again, I go back to my first comment, National Weather Service was telling us we were facing a catastrophic storm. I'm not a weather forecaster. I have to take what they give us and action off that. So getting that message out to have people understand, one, we need to take this serious, two, we're doing our preparation, and three is manage the expectation of this isn't going away in 24 hours, as we've seen. As I jump my truck into a snowbank out here to come into this meeting today, we're all facing the same kind of conditions from Lee County, Southwest Virginia, to Alexandria, the same challenges. Actually, they had it worse because they got another foot of snow after we got it up here. So that outreach was ongoing. We did press conferences, we did media interviews, trying to just get that message out about safety. Again, I do want to thank all the people in the region, the entire state, Maryland, DC. We asked folks to stay off the roads, and they did. That gave us an opportunity to really get out there and not have a repeat of what we ended up facing in 2022, was having those folks out there on the road. We were able to get those major roadways cleared, get people, get hospital routes cleared, get fire routes cleared. So I do want to thank all the people that did stay home and stay off the road. As we saw the storm approaching, they kept changing the forecast on us. So we kept adjusting our response plan accordingly. They kept moving that snow ice line further north, further north, further north, which to me was worse because I was going to face catastrophic icing in a bigger swath of the state and those power outages. Knock wood, we did only see that in very localized areas in Southwest and in Hampton Roads area. Because I've been talking to my counterparts in Tennessee, and what they faced is much different than we faced with the safety of our responders, the safety of our linemen to go out there and restore the power, and then the safety of the people sitting in freezing homes for over a week. We did get a state declaration, which enabled us to lean forward with our messaging, as well as adjusting some of our administrative processes to make sure that we're able to have the tools in the toolbox that we need. And we did get a federal declaration from the federal government for direct federal assistance. FEMA deployed to our EOC. They moved caches of equipment down to our warehouse in Richmond. They moved a stash of generators down to Richmond, to Fort Lee, as well as to the border of Virginia and North Carolina down in Bristol, like by Martinsville, somewhere in there. And so they really leaned in case we needed the support. Now, luckily, the storm was different than we were looking at catastrophic-wise. I know a lot of people are still upset because ice creates different problems, as we've heard, and we're still dealing with it a little bit. Hopefully, a few more days of sun will clear that up. But it was, I hate to say this, but it always could be worse, and Mother Nature has a say. So this time, we were prepared for something a little bit different, a lot worse on the infrastructure restoration side, but I think we fared better than some of our neighboring states. It did create disruptions, transportation disruptions. Schools were closed probably across the state for over a week. That's a challenge for a lot of people. My kids missed 7 days of school in Spotsylvania County. My wife wasn't particularly happy about that, I'm sure. But you want to keep people safe. You want to keep them off the road. I think we learned through COVID that we could do some different things with our school children. It sometimes isn't the best, but they were on their computers and they were working. But again, we focus on a top level is safety. Safety of our staff, of our employees, and of the population of the whole region. And how do we make sure that we get that message out? And resiliency is about recovering quicker, right? It's not about preventing it. Mother Nature has a say. We can't prevent an ice storm, but it's about how do we have plans and procedures in place to try and recover quicker than we did the last time. This is a little bit unprecedented with this cold snap that we saw right after that storm. So I really appreciate your time and for the invite today. And sir, I really appreciated your comments as I listened to your press conference today. Your media hit outside, I think you nailed it. So thank you very much for that.
Good morning, everyone. Afternoon, everyone. So I'll just give my thoughts. We're still in the tail end of the event. But I'll give my thoughts, which I don't officially count after action thoughts since we're not fully out of it. I think each region and jurisdiction has different life cycles to a large snow event. I've worked personally virtually every major snow event for the past 25 years in DC, and I've lived through before that several more. And part of the problem is that in this region, we get it so infrequently you can remember it. It's like 2016, where were you? 2009, where were you? We give them names. And that's a problem because when such a large amount of time goes by between large events, you don't always remember what you did well and what you didn't do well. And if people change in jobs, then some of the knowledge that's like crystal clear right now, and it's crystal clear for everyone who works the storm, then let's say the next big one is in 7 years or 8 years, or the next big that's really unique and difficult. Those folks that crystal clear thoughts will be written down. It may not transfer to folks who will be living through it when we're going to get it again. And maybe with climate change, we're going to get it every year, some form of it. But you know, we all, if you've been here long enough, you all have those dates in your head. 1996, my first large snow event in the DC area. You know, that's part of my comments. One thing I write down is that it's really important to try to work hard to have lessons be transferred and stay long enough to be able to have an impact on your next storm. And part of the difficulty, or sort of the most common mistake, is they just look at what didn't go well. And the assumption there is that everything that went well is baked into the cake. So if we did things well this storm, we'll definitely do things well the next storm. That's actually not true. So if you're not capturing both what you did well and what you didn't do well, and really make sure that is infused in the DNA of the organization that transcends one individual person in it, then a lot of the things we talk about here aren't going to get remembered when they happen again. So I'm someone who actually did personally work a bunch of storms, so I can see. I had it in different roles, so I was not always city administrator, so I can see the different differences between the two. So I'm gonna, with that as context, I'll go through the things in my observation that, at least for DC, I thought we did well and we didn't do well. And we, to the extent, you know, certainly for DC, the state of Virginia, very different, you know, experiences, but there might be some commonality there. So for me, a lot of the snow, there's a certain amount of just like basic math of how much equipment, how many people do you have? And the equipment's defined as sort of salt and the brine before the storm, during the storm, it's the snow equipment. We don't have the same variation of snow equipment that some other jurisdictions do that have a lot more snow. But we had a mix of, for us, it is light plows, which are large pickup trucks, larger plows, which are much larger vehicles. We did a good job of having enough equipment here on the first day of the storm and have enough salt to be able to do that. For those who get salt from Baltimore, there was a mythical ship that seemed to not quite be at dock, that came from South America, that we were all waiting for, like, seemed like days and days to have this one ship port. So while we did have enough salt, a lesson was, can we diversify the supply chain of salt that we have? So if a ship is waiting to port in Baltimore, you do not have the entire mid-Atlantic waiting to get salt from the ship. So that sort of is one of the things, but I thought we did a good job for that pre-treatment. Second thing we did well, a lesson from prior storms that did translate, is once you have your folks for the first shift, you got to get them for the second shift. And if they go home after the first shift, they probably can't get back in for your second shift. So we did a really good job of getting hotel rooms in advance, of being able to have a supply of people and talent throughout the entire event through different rounds of snowstorms. A question I always ask my folks as we go through multiple rounds of like shifts is, how much equipment do you still have? And there's always gonna be a degradation, things break down. So we were able to maintain about 80% of our starting equipment list, which is actually pretty good considering the icing conditions over what turned out to be a multi-day event. But I try to look at what's the degradation of our supplies from day one through multiple days of the event. And I thought we did a good job in that. And as we approached, I always would say over contract. Some suppliers just aren't gonna show up. You may think that you're in an exclusive relationship because they say we're exclusive with you, but it turns out they may have more than one person that they're in an exclusive relationship with. So we tried to over-procure for our contracted vehicles and ultimately got what I thought was a very large number of them, considering the vast scale the storm really required, that a lot of the supply chains were getting tied up because it was hitting their home states. In 2016, the district did an outstanding job in moving snow, and what people who worked it realized is that that storm missed the Northeast. So we had 300 pieces of equipment of people who literally, they just do snow, and they take the summer off. One group from Buffalo and one group from central Massachusetts. And they had mile-long convoys, and they had their own supplies, their own kitchens, their own everything. And then we just gave them a map of the city, and we said, please move snow. Because this storm hit the entire part of our country, those extra supply chains got tied up in their home states. That got difficult. So we had really good movement on day one, much more challenging in moving snow. So, and I won't take up all the time, but I'll sort of go through a couple of just other items I took here. Technology, this is where I think as a region there are opportunities to work with technology. We should always know where all of our assets are at any given point in time, and we should have a much more scientifically precise way of being able to assess the condition of roads. Aerial technology is much better. Optics are much better in terms of cameras that can be on airplanes. Many of us use drones to some extent, and so the images that we saw of the 1 through 5, which is sort of like this human training, we can get a lot better on using technology to much more accurately get a sense in real time of the conditions of roadways. I think is an area from exciting improvement around technology. And then for DC, this might be unique to us, is that when you have more than 12 inches, we have to not just plow snow, we have to move it. And historically, the place we've put our snow is a large parking lot called RFK parking lot. And that's not gonna be available for sort of snow removal. So I think the next big storm we have for DC is gonna be a question of where do we put the snow. I did see images of Arlington using up parts of a roadway. So we're gonna have to get creative in trying to use snow. We had to use snow in this case for some federal property that we've never used snow dumping for. We had to use it for this time, even with RFK available. So snow removal is a much different kind of equipment than snow plowing. It's more, it's difficult to come by. So it took us a couple of days to have the volume of snow moving equipment we did have. But having a place to put the snow is an area that I think will be part of, like, if there's another 7 years before the next big storm, will be part of the next big storm. My final point, I'll just say very quickly, is if you're ever I happen to be in Michigan this weekend showing my son a couple of colleges for like accepted student days, and we got snow. And you can tell the equipment is a little different, but also the confidence of the drivers. Some of them were going virtually highway speeds. On the highway, they were the plow, and I was behind them. So there is this, if you only do something that's really difficult once every 7 or 8 years, there's gonna be a skill degradation versus I do it every month, I do it twice a month. So there is and I don't know the answer to that, but there is a skills question that people can drive and are licensed to drive a plow, but if you only have really challenging, in DC, narrow streets, we'd have plow drivers who weren't sure they could get the plow down without clipping cars. And so the residents say, where's my plow? And so we kind of have to either figure out the skills issue or have different equipment that don't require, like, can take somewhat new to large snow and have a narrower piece of equipment to be able to go down our narrow streets. I'll stop there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Rich Madalino, I'm the Chief Administrative Officer of the Montgomery County Government. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having us do this briefing and to share observations about an event that is still ongoing. Saw plenty of equipment as I was driving around today, as people are still moving snow around. First, just for people who don't know, if you're kind of surprised by the Maryland turnout at this meeting today, right now is Governor Moore's State of the State address. So many of the normal faces you would see here today in Maryland are in Annapolis. I'm wearing this WMATA cherry blossom pin that Charlie Scott gave me as a way to sort of manifest spring. I think I heard Mr. Clark talk about wanting spring to come early, so I'm excited. And I don't know if everyone knew Groundhog Day was last week. And while Poxitani Phil said there'd be a long winter, Baltimore Bill, the weather crab, forecasted an early spring, and Topper Shut said I'd put more money on the crab than the groundhog. So hopefully we'll see an early spring. So I want to thank everyone, especially in our county government, but at our state and across the whole region, all the people that work to clear the snow. You know, it is such an effort, and people were out. You heard Kevin talking about hotel rooms, and people were working 24/7. We had crews out there. So it was a huge effort. So thank you to everyone across the region who made it happen. This, as we've all talked about, was an unusual storm. We in Montgomery County, and I think Maryland is fundamentally different than DC and Virginia. There are 7,800 lane miles of roads in Montgomery County. We, the county government, are responsible for clearing 5,500 of those lane miles. The state is responsible for clearing 1,500 lane miles, and our handful of municipalities are responsible for 800 miles. So you have this dance of different people clearing different things. And of course, in the middle of a storm, we're counting on the State Highway Administration to be clearing in Maryland all the roads with numbers. So 495, 355, and they're out there clearing that. What we're trying to do is keep an emergency primary network available so that we have a clear road at all times within a quarter of a mile of every residence in the county, so that we can get an ambulance, a fire truck in an emergency. So that's what we're doing until the snow stops, and then we start plowing. We are resourced for clearing up to 6 inches of snow to make every road passable within 48 hours. 6 inches of snow within 48 hours. We have had so many nice winters that we've been able to overperform and have a clear network, usually well within that 48-hour window. And I think we were trying to say ahead of time, we have created a new set of expectations, and that this storm is not going to be a normal storm. And people's expectations for what is a clear road as opposed to a passable road are going to be very different. We've also noticed, I don't know if other people have noticed this, our contractors, so we had 600 pieces of equipment, roughly half of our own, half contractors. The number of contractors in this space has gone down because warm winters have meant the landscaping companies, some of these other firms have just decided, I'm not keeping up my equipment. I'm not buying that new plow. It's just not worth it for the limited amount of work we do. So more is on us to deliver. Communications. There are now so many different channels to communicate on that it's hard to get out a consistent message. And I think we've spent already a lot of time thinking about how do we get something out better? Because, you know, I know everyone is hanging on the county Twitter or Facebook account for information, but sadly that isn't the case. And so how do we put out a unified message? How do we engage every county council member? How do we engage every PTA listserv to get out a message? You know, we have, and I did not realize this until this storm, we have in our snow emergency law, right? Everyone has a snow emergency. Don't park on a snow emergency route. We have a policy, and we try to let people know, if the storm is on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, park on the even side of the street. if it's a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, park on the odd side of the street. What's missing in that list? There's no rule for a Sunday. And so you have a Sunday storm, and you're just like asking people to move. But, you know, I've started to think through, do we need to have a regional approach to remind people that, hey, let's all conform our rules to say, if the storm happens on an even day, park on the even side of the street. If it's an odd day, park on the odd side. Because then, you know, if I just know on my own street where people parked correctly, we were able to clear a lot more of the street. But when people are on both sides of suburban streets that, right, were never built for every car, every home having 4 cars as opposed to just 1 car, you know, it's just a more complex thing. So maybe we need to do some regional alignment about that message so that it doesn't matter, because people move between Loudoun County and Montgomery County and Charles County. You know, that if we had this rule about our approach to parking, at least in the suburbs, then maybe that would help us from moving things around. We discovered on a technology standpoint, you know, we have all of our plows with GPS. It's feeding into this nice map that is telling you what road has been treated and what road hasn't. But actually all it's telling you is what road the plow has driven on, not whether if it's treated. And so if we had a piece of equipment that was struggling because of the snow, the ice, the condition it was in, it wasn't recording that, it was just recording the fact that it drove down the street, which then was feeding into a system that people could sit at home and see, oh, it says all of the, we don't produce our map. I know you put up the whole map. We don't put up the whole map. We just put up a, in your area, we have every part of the county is in an area, like 70% of your streets have been plowed, 100% have been plowed. And so people were looking out and saying, hey, the app says 100% of the streets have been plowed, my road hasn't been. And so twofold, what does plowed mean? Passable is not necessarily asphalt. And if there's a problem, it's not reporting. And then I think what was different about this storm, and since you were here before, 311 has evolved. And we discovered, we opened our 311 system for complaints, I'll call it complaints too soon, right? Because we weren't supposed to, people weren't supposed to be able to call in and say, my road hasn't been plowed, until we had sort of hit the button that, oh, we had plowed 100% of the county, we had done a pass of 100% of the county. So then people called in and said, my road wasn't plowed, and then when we hit the button, I'm using that, oh, we're done, it automatically erased all those requests and closed them. So Kevin has called in to say, my road hasn't been plowed, and all of a sudden he looks his service request and it says closed, and he's like, wait a second, what? You ignored me. And that just created frustration when people were sitting at home with their kids, getting more tired and frustrated, and this was a storm that was unfamiliar to us all because of the amount of ice and then the incredible cold that froze it all. And so, you know, if it had been a normal storm, I'm sure we would have been able to do our normal good job. You know, this one created a whole bunch of frustrations that we added to in our best effort to keep everyone informed. It turned out that the technology did not serve us the way we had hoped. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we're going to go to WMATA next, and I wanted to thank WMATA because I know you all did seemingly such a good job that in many areas around your metro stations, you were able to help us clear even further out into the walk shed to make the stations accessible. So thank you.
Very welcome. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I guess it's good afternoon. Yep, we're hour into it. My name is Leroy Jones. I'm Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer here at Metro. First, I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of our regional partners leading up to the storm, throughout the storm. There was a significant amount of coordination that took place, and I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that starting out. Also want to just thank our hard-working team here at Metro that on the front line who did an excellent job clearing the snow, and also just in terms of preparation, which I'll get into in a moment. Similar to Kevin, I've had the opportunity to be in the area my whole life, and I've been in Metro since 1999 in various capacities. So I've done the job as a frontline person as well as working my way up. So I was just really pleased and proud to see the hard work of the team through this storm. As you all know, we try our best as Metro to operate in all types of weather every single day, and also through this new thing called Snowcrete. We know many of our customers just don't have the opportunity to stay indoors during the storm, after the storm. They actually have to get out, go to work, and make essential trips, and we try our best to do that before the storm and during the storm as long as it's safe to do so. We mobilized our staff, all of our vehicles across all modes, access, rail, and bus, and making sure that all of our equipment was ready to respond to support all of those essential trips, urgent healthcare trips, getting to the grocery store and to pharmacies throughout the region. Although all throughout the storm, our number one priority, as many other folks mentioned, was safety. Safety for our team members that's actually out there clearing the snow, providing the service, but also our customers. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything possible to provide the best service, the safest service for our region. Overall, as an organization, we felt prepared going into the storm. It was a significant amount of work that we did leading into the storm, where we actually had a lot of coordination calls starting as early as Tuesday internally. We had a lot of calls and meetings with our Chief Executive Officer and our General Manager, Randy Clark, and the entire senior executive team to constantly brief day by day how we were looking based on the forecast. Also, I want to just take the opportunity to start walking through the timeline of our preparation and our response to throughout the storm, how we were being proactive as well as responsive. So before the storm, as I talked a little bit about, we collaborated early and often with our regional partners and key stakeholders. So just a few that have already been mentioned: the National Weather Service, the DC Health and Medical Coalition. Really appreciate HCMA for putting us in contact with that organization to make sure that the hospitals knew what type of service we were going to be able to provide throughout the storm. COG, we participated in all of the COG calls. PG County, Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Montgomery County, all of the DOTs, just to name a few of the organizations that we worked with leading up to it. Here at Metro, we pride ourselves not just on safety, but communication. So we really leaned in to make sure that our comms messages started early and prior to the storm, and just making sure that we updated our customers as conditions got worse and as conditions improved, and what levels of service we were going to be able to provide. Going in, we were committed to providing consistent communications to our customers throughout the storms to make sure that they had frequent updates, because our service patterns, as you all know, is quite dynamic when you're dealing with the storm. Things change. Even with the best plans, we have to be able to be nimble enough to pivot to provide safe service to make sure that we're able to get folks home. We also leveraged and committed to leveraging video on our vehicles as well as in our facilities to give us more information in real time faster. In addition, Metro and DDOT, prior to the first storm, I know we had a really small event early December, but prior to even that event, myself and Sharon Kirschbaum, we had a conversation and said, hey, it'd be a great idea, and she offered up to embed someone over in the Snow Command Center when they opened up. And that made a big difference for us because we were able to prioritize, tell them which streets needed to be prioritized on some of our major thoroughfares, some of the roads that needed to be cleared whenever DC was ready to open back up schools. So that coordination was really helpful in actually having that conversation way before we ever got a storm. That just paid big dividends after the storm and once we got it. As I mentioned, we started internal meetings way in advance of the snow. We also took emergency precautions to make sure that our systems and infrastructure was in good shape. So we strategically placed generators throughout the region to be ready to deploy to some of our stations in the event that we lost power. We also made sure that our elevator tank heaters and our escalator step heaters were operational. We also kept our escalators running throughout the storm to make sure that they didn't build up a lot of ice. We also turned on our third rail heater tapes. And also we did something that we haven't done since 2016, which we actually stored our trains, some of our trains underground. That made a big difference because we were able to just put operators straight on the trains and start to ramp up service the day after the storm. Similar to many folks in the room, we also booked hotel rooms for some key critical staff to make sure that we can get them back on that second shift. We actually end up having to get more hotel rooms after the first day because we started having some challenges with call-outs from some operation staff, which obviously is important. Also, the storm, as we all know, hit Saturday on January the 24th, and we activated our emergency operations center out of our Eisenhower facility where our control center is also located. And it stayed open through 1:30 p.m. on Thursday. So that's a long time to keep emergency operations center staff, 12-hour shifts. So we had a lot of people, not just in the control center working 12-hour shifts, but pretty much all of our facilities teams, our infrastructure teams, working 12 hours out in the freezing cold to clear our platforms, entrances, our sidewalks, our bus stops that we're responsible for, our busways, and also, as mentioned, we cleared over 360 stops for our regional partners, and we're really happy to do that because at the end of the day, it's all about what can we do collectively as a region to support our customers in the region and the residents in the region. Also pivoting to Sunday, January the 26th, all of Metro Access trips, all life-sustaining trips, we were able to operate for all customers who chose not to cancel their trips. This was a huge priority, and we're talking about people who have dialysis needs and things like that. Metro system remained open. We were actually able to run service end to end throughout the entire storm. We never had to go to an underground service pattern at all. We did open up service on Monday and Tuesday at 6 a.m. to give our teams the opportunity to get our facilities and our vehicles ready to do that. And then we also used information that we were able to get from a lot of folks around this table, whether schools were going to be open, whether the government was going to be open, and we pivoted to a different service pattern. By Thursday, January the 29th, Metro Access was fully restored to 100%, where we were actually able to run all service. During the storm, Metro Access, we provided over 7,000 trips. That's a lot of trips in the snow, right? Metro Bus, all 126 bus routes were either running on normal or on detour by Thursday. That was a big deal. We did see a dip in ridership, so we were down about 40%. So we had right at 60% of normal ridership. Metro Rail ridership, we were right about 75% compared to the prior week. While moving throughout the region was definitely far from normal, we still provided excellent service. We provided over 1.5 million trips between Sunday and Thursday, over 513,000 on bus, over 1 million on rail, and over 7,000, as I previously mentioned, on Metro Access. So the week of the storm, Sunday through Saturday, we made about 2.6 million trips across all modes, which is about a 56% reduction from the prior week. On Thursday, February the 5th, we had a really busy day. We had 534,000 rail trips, our best day since December of 2025, and busier than any other February day since 2020, pre-pandemic. This rapid recovery honestly required the region to really come together. I know our general manager, he was able to participate in a few press conferences with DCH SEMA and the mayor. And just the entire team just came together, in my opinion, as a region, and I'm just proud of the work that we were able to do as a region. I know I had the opportunity to reach out and connect with all of the regional transportation providers in the area, and we stayed in constant communication about what they were doing, what we were going to do for that day and the day after as well. Post-storm, one of the things that we thought was really important as an agency, we did conduct a lessons learned session to document the things that we thought went really well and the opportunities to improve. So currently, right now, we are looking at all of our procedures to see where we need to make some modifications based on the things that went well and the opportunities to improve. One of the key takeaways for Metro, and I think we all probably could agree to this, that we probably need to really think through what does a bus stop and sidewalk clearing plan actually look like collectively as a region. And one of the things that I failed to mention that our team really did a good job on from an infrastructure standpoint, they actually had to respond to a few rail breaks. So imagine having to respond to a rail break when there's nothing but snow between the tracks. So the team was actually able to safely restore service. And actually, we put out a comms video about a fire snake that kind of went viral. So we also tried to have a little fun with it during the storm as well. So those are a few things that we did leading up to and during the storm. And post-storm, one of the things we are still dealing with, the decreased travel lanes, that's definitely impacting our ability to provide a high-quality, on-time performance. And the snowbank buildup is actually impacting our ability to turn. So some of our buses had to stay on detours while our partners continued to work to clear the streets. But again, it was a lot of snow and ice, and it's just a tough time for folks to get that cleared. So that's pretty much the update for Metro, and just really, again, really appreciate the partnership.
Thank you. We definitely wanted to provide an opportunity for questions, and I wanted to start with Ms. Gaskins and Mr. Allen. I had just one very brief question, and I just want to hear from you experts. As elected officials, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, during the course of the storm, I received numerous texts, calls from constituents, like, where are you in terms of snow removal in my community? And being quite frank, I had no idea where we were, just in terms of policy. And so my question is part of the operation, does it include anticipating exactly where you will begin snow removal? And with that in mind, do you actually provide that type of information to the public? In other words, you're telling the public, look, our strategy is we're going to hit these neighborhoods first. We anticipate that we'll be in your neighborhood by this time. Is that wise practice? Or in light of the type of storm that we just witnessed, would that create potential issues just in terms of timing? Because what may be considered in the past adequate time to complete that type of mission, because of the type of storm that we saw, it probably create challenges for your employees to actually complete the work. And so that would be my question. And I guess I'm looking from the district and from Maryland, Montgomery County as well, just strategically, is that wise practice? Because in my mind, it's like you're being transparent to the public. You're saying this is where we are, but does it create challenges?
So on our website, on our snow page, we do have the strategy laid out. It starts with, you can put in an address and figure out who's responsible for plowing your road, because is it a state road, a county road, or a municipal road? So, because if it's a City of Gaithersburg road, please don't be calling a county council member to complain, for example. So, trying to, well, but, we, again, we have our whole order of prioritization of what types of roads that we clear. We do not publicize this road, this neighborhood is first or that neighborhood is first, but the county is broken down into service areas. And so there have been a lot of questions that have come up, and we've been struggling to figure out how do we respond to the person who says, my road is always last. Why is my road always last? And I think we're gonna have to try to figure out that afterwards. But we were trying, like this year, because we were trying to sync up as much of our plowing schedule with our trash collection schedule, because we were very worried that we would wind up having days of trash buildup. So we were trying to make sure our Monday routes, which were going to start on Tuesday, that we were ready for as many of those routes to go out that day. We have to do a much better job of syncing up with the school system and understanding the school system understanding what we're doing, and vice versa. And very much to Kevin's point about institutional knowledge, with almost an entire new leadership at our school system for a variety of reasons, I think they struggled I think we were making a lot of assumptions they knew what we were doing, when you had a lot of new people in their first big storm with the county, and maybe too many assumptions were made.
Sure. Well, thank you all for the presentations. I guess I had a quick comment, just picking up on communications before I ask my questions. I think one of the things that we learned, or I learned during this storm, was that many people, even if they see the strategy or have heard over and over all the maps and the plans that we're doing, in the moment when you're just trying to get out of your home, it doesn't matter. And so I know I started doing a daily video series that I can't seem to get out of now, on just explaining. So when we say a primary route, what does that mean? Why did it take us so many times to go over this primary route? How many times did it take us in a previous storm versus this storm? And the number of people who have tuned in, I think in the past week, on social media, I've gained something like 5,000 followers just asking questions about snow. And so I think it's really given us a lot of lessons learned for on our communications pages, how do we actually explain what some of this means? When we're stuck, why are we stuck? For the last road folks, explaining, here are the roads around you that we've gotten to. Here's what happened when we tried to get to your road. Here's why we're stuck. So it's taking a lot more time, but I do think that's the communications we probably have to go to in the future. And also recognizing that things I think Mr. Jones mentioned video. Video and short messages are where people get it now. It's a minute or less. You have to be able to explain every single thing that's happening. With that, I did have two questions, and both are for Mr. Jones. One, you mentioned that part of the technology that you deployed was actually having video out on the street to get real-time information. I was curious if that's something that your trains and buses and contractors were already fitted with, or is that technology you found a way to deploy throughout the storm? And then the second, I was super intrigued by the comment about a regional bus stop plan. Bus stops became a big challenge for us, both for the Dash, but also school bus stops, and trying to figure out where all of these stops are. What is, some places it was just a little block cleared, but then nobody cleared the sidewalks to get to that block. And so I'd also just be curious your thoughts on what you think it would take to actually mobilize such a plan.
Yep, so thank you for the question. So the first question you asked about video, all of our facilities, rail stations, platforms, external part of the stations, as well as our buses and some of our rail fleet definitely have video. So we leveraged what we already had. We weren't able to leverage any type of video from our contractors on their trucks. In addition, one of the things we're also looking at is using the video that's actually available in our bus operations supervisor cars who actually go out and assess the routes. We didn't actually execute that this time, but that's definitely something we are looking to implement as we move forward. So we definitely look to leverage all video that we actually had available to us during the storm. To the second part of your question, I'll start off by saying that we have about 7,900 bus stops in the region that we provide service to. So with that being said, approximately 600 of those are at metro facilities, meaning a rail station, whether it's an Anacostia, Pentagon, or something like a Silver Spring Transit Center, right? So with that being said, I think it's something that from a metro perspective, we're really open to having that conversation. I think we just need to get the leaders together to have the conversation, quite frankly, sooner rather than later, before the next storm. And we're really looking forward to engaging the regional leaders throughout in that conversation for sure, but I think it's going to take a collective effort.
Mayor Gaskins, can I, we've been trying to figure out, the city of Memphis has moved forward with a very interesting plan where they've equipped all of their public works vehicles with cameras. And then the cameras, when they return to the depot every night, download all of the footage, and an AI program goes through all of the footage and identifies every problem it saw, a pothole, a broken curb, but just to create a constant analysis. And, could you do something like that? Could any of us do something like that with our vehicles to provide that sort of input? In the middle of a snowstorm, I don't know how good the cameras would work. We have this wonderful police drone program that we have found very effective. But when we moved forward with it, one of the things that we had to agree to was no surveillance. It's only responding to an emergency. Suddenly, we're in this situation where it's oh, we can't put those drones up to monitor road conditions because we promised we wouldn't surveil the community. So suddenly you're in a, do we need to go back and say, unless it's a weather emergency, to let the public know? So it's very interesting to see how unintended consequences of different things and policies can sometimes get in the way.
Real quick on the note about the bus stops, and I would just kind of point to the DMV moves process, and one of the big discussions was folks that ride buses in this region don't really think necessarily about jurisdictional boundaries or the fact that you're going from the connector to Dash to Loudoun County Transit to Metro. And I certainly witnessed it myself being in Alexander with Dash, with the city schools, and the bus stops are all treated wildly different. And you know, you may be able to go to a website and say, who do I talk to or blame for this stop? Not, but the point is maybe we should, as an after-action piece for COG pretty quickly, and that was part of the discussion with DMV Moves, was how do we treat bus stops in this region? If there's an extra dollar that your county or city has to install a new bus stop, what kind of standards are we using for the number of travelers that go to that bus stop? Just so we have some metrics, so there's not a Taj Mahal bus stop in a county that hardly anyone takes, and there's, you know, a plastic seat on the busiest bus route. Like if we have an extra dollar to spend on a stop, what type of stop it is, and can there be some uniformity? And maybe we should be giving the same thought to how do we clear these stops? So that's a do out for us to maybe bring the region together, and Leroy would look for you to help lead that with Metro.
Absolutely, look forward to it.
Thanks. I will echo Mayor Gaskins on both points on communications. And Mayor Gaskins, I thought you did a great job with your videos, but also on the bus stops. At the end of the day, somebody waiting for the bus, they do not care whose responsibility it is. They just want to be able to wait safely and get on the bus and get to work, get to school. And I saw way too many people having to just stand in the middle of the street. So I am glad and appreciate WMATA's recognition of that. And then the regional approach, I think, is what we got to do. Because again, the person's got to get to work. They don't care whose job it is. They just need to get it done. To Mr. Donahue, I appreciate your kind of recap of a lot of the work. And I think you're 100% correct about making sure we recognize what went right. Not just because we want to institutionalize that and kind of keep that muscle there, but we have a lot of workers, public servants, who have pulled 12-hour shift after 12-hour shift after 12-hour shift. And from a morale perspective, they're going to hear about what didn't go right. And we do want to make sure that that workforce hears, this is what went right, and we did really well, because we're government. We're going to beat up the things that didn't go well. We're going to hear that. But it's really important to emphasize what did go well. So I agree with you. I want to make sure we institutionalize that. The two areas I was going to ask about, because you did mention making sure we capture what didn't go as well as we wanted to. And there were two that I didn't hear you talk about that I want to give you a chance to respond to. One is, when school is out, work is remote, we're locked in snow and ice, we're all pedestrians. And I need my ability to walk to the grocery store, walk my kid to school, whatever it is I'm going to do. We would solve one problem and create another. Our intersections and crosswalks were just completely mountains of 3 feet of ice to get over. And every time we'd come plow another road, we'd create the problem. Some of that might be contractors that are just running hard and they don't know our neighborhoods, and so they're dumping it in the wrong place. But I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're assessing the ability to make sure pedestrians can get around. And second is something I know you and I have talked about that is an ongoing challenge. We're not through it yet, but we've got folks that still have gone 2 weeks without trash and recycling collection. There's multiple reasons that go into that, but being able to diagnose that and come up with a plan, because I think that is, certainly for me, it is the number one thing. My phone continues to ring off the hook. And I know we've talked about this, of just how bad it's gotten with just with the snow and ice in the alleys, but with the bags and bags and bags and piles and piles and piles of trash. And that is definitely one of those that didn't go the way we wanted to. And kind of that assessment of how to do it differently, I think, is important. But those would be two I'd love your thoughts on. And understanding, of course, we're still in it and we're not completely out of it yet.
We are still in it. So for the pedestrian access, I do think, you know, there's so much pressure to plow the streets that the drivers run hard, and so the snow moves to the side of the vehicle. And so if you're going through intersections, then you have, you know, you'd have, you know, a street that is passable, but at the end of the intersection is like a little mound of snow from the bypassing plows. The intersections and sidewalks. For intersections, I do think that this storm in particular, given the level of ice and the cold temperatures, has reinforced the need to have a snow hauling operation to follow quickly the plowing. So the snow has to go somewhere, and if it's not getting moved to a place to put it, it's going to be typically on the side of the road or the intersection, in the intersection. A really experienced driver will then work an intersection and just plow the intersection to be able to move the snow within the intersection. That takes time. That slows down your ability to hit those blocks. But I think for both pedestrian access and the nature of the storm, the value of having enough of a hauling operation to follow the plowing. And that's how then we were able to free up the intersections from the residual snow from the plows. And the sidewalks is, in DC, we find people. This is the first time we find people in many, many snowstorms, because you can imagine as much demand there is to hold someone accountable, you find the person who can't get out of their house or doesn't, is not in a position to plow, to shovel, you get an equal reaction or a stronger one. We have volunteers that we call snow heroes that we organize and deploy to individuals who sign up that can't shovel their sidewalk. We want to make that more robust. Most of the time, the most challenging folks they have is often sidewalks in which the private owner is responsible for the sidewalk in front of it, and it was not getting there. Now, the second question you raised is about, I think for what I typically tell the teams that as we prepare for a big snow event, and I did it for this one, I said the two things that's going to really cause the most anguish. It's not the first day of the snow. It's not the second day of the snow. It's whatever is the part of regular life that takes the longest to come back. So in DC, we're pretty aggressive about opening up schools. The mayor would much rather have people be mad that she opened up than be mad that she stayed closed. So we opened up schools on Thursday. So for DC, we have alley-based trash pickup. And so that is for us, and each jurisdiction might be a bit different. That's the thing that is the longest to revert back to just normal life. I'd say that, and typically past days, people the availability of parking spaces, if you have street parking, has just not been there. So for our teachers, my wife's an educator who works in DC. She could not park. She could get to school. She couldn't park at school. So I think it's the aspect of regular life that takes the longest to come back. That ultimately is what people will remember the longest after a storm. And the things that you worked really hard to accomplish, then we did things in this one that we've never done before. We've never removed snow from alleys, ever. We did that thinking of trash. And I like to tell people today's hard-won victory is tomorrow's base expectation. So the next big storm, people will ask, why haven't you removed snow from the alley? So you just have to, that's part of has to come forward. But for the trash, I would say, for DC, it represents, in each jurisdiction is a bit different, what's the thing that takes the longest to come back? And that's where people's anxiety and frustration will be focused on. For right now, that is getting back to trash. For other places, it's going to be different, though.
So we want to make sure we have adequate time to delve into agenda item 8. So Mr. Glass has had his hand up, so we'll close out the questioning with his question, and we can look at a continuation of this discussion for future agenda items. So
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. As we look forward, there were some pieces of information that I found very interesting, particularly with the use of contractors and learning that there are regional syndicates of contractors that come up and down the East Coast or whatever their business model might be. But as we look ahead, what is the coordination among our jurisdictions with the use of contractors that might not originate from our own residents, our own companies, but might be shared in some way?
In 2016, it was literally someone who had worked the 2009 storm. And I'm going to simplify this, but it says, I know a guy in Massachusetts, another one in Buffalo. The storm didn't hit them. If that person had, this is where you capture, didn't have the memory of having, and those folks, they own large snow removal companies, and they didn't have snow to work. So they each actually had a mile-long convoy down 95. with people. And so it is helpful to know, but it's where like the knowledge is, knowledge and memory of what went well has a half-life, and you got to capture it.
So I'll just add a couple of points to that question. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to get together to talk through like who are the contractors that we all have under contract right now, and then figure out, is there an opportunity to do like a co-op where we all have a larger group, and then we can try to figure out what are the priorities for these contractors so that we can better send them to where they need to go. So maybe that's something that can be put on the agenda as well for the bus stop clearing piece.
No,
Yeah, I'm looking at Scott as we talk about this, but we do joint procurement, and that can certainly and should be part of the agenda to talk about that. Yeah.
So we will definitely make this
and
a
to figure out-
follow-up discussion.
And to figure out that we weren't all paying the same people to do the same thing, and they weren't, which is also something that we can do. Yes, we want to be exclusive, and it wasn't there.
Well, I want to thank all of you for this outstanding presentation. It was very informative, and we will definitely make this a follow-up item to complete this overall discussion. The next item on the agenda is regional economic monitoring. As you know, the upcoming year will center around discussions on the expansion of our region's overall economy. Our next item will be hearing from COG's work to track and analyze regional data related to the state of our overall economy and our partnerships with Brookings on the DMV Monitor. Today, we will be hearing from COG Planning, Data, and Research Program Director Tim Kanan and Brookings Fellow Dr. Tracy Hayden Lowe. First, I'll hand it over to Clark to introduce COG's work on this item.
All right, well, first for the board members, the last agenda item, executive session, is going to be punted to next month, so we have enough time for this agenda item, which is great. A real quick bit of background, this month marks year 3 for me being the executive director at COG, and one of the two things I've heard over the first 3 years that COG is known for, one, we have fantastic staff, and we produce really great data that this region and the states rely on. One of the things that I've observed over the last 3 years is all of our different programs that rely on data, GIS, surveying have developed over the years and generations, sometimes in silos, which means the way that we collect and purchase data is different, the way we store it and name it is not necessarily consistent, and the way that we display it or share it with the region can be a little bit inconsistent. So Tim has taken on a role for the Transportation Planning Board that I have asked him, and he's accepted to take on for all of COG, which is something akin to a chief data officer, what is a chief data officer for all of COG. The other bit, just from kind of an equity standpoint for staff, if you have a data guru on your team that can produce a dashboard or a GIS product, that's great. If you don't, you kind of have to go shopping amongst the staff to find someone to help you. This will be kind of a clearinghouse of sorts to prioritize the board's priorities and make sure folks are getting the resources that they need. So Tim agreed to take that on, and I'll let Tim talk a little bit about the work that we've been producing for many decades at COG, our Regional Economic Monitoring Service, REMS, and then Dr. Lowe is here from Brookings, who I'm just really, really happy that Brookings, through the course of discussions over the last year, has partnered with us to produce the DMV Monitor. Brookings does a really excellent job of taking raw data and helping us figure out what it means and what's going on in this region. So Tracy, thank you for being here, and Tim, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Director Mercer, Chair Collins, members of the board. It's great to be here. I look forward to becoming more of a familiar face to this board. I'm quite familiar at the TPB. One of the legacy programs that we have been doing over decades, and actually this is a legacy program that I was involved with when I was first hired at COG, literally last millennium, was tracking economic trends and development in the region. And my colleague Greg Goodwin, who is a very familiar face to you, oversees a lot of that work right now, putting together economic dashboards on our Regional Economic Monitoring System, or REMS. We have a series of reports and dashboards for that. One of the logical progressions to that work was to partner with Brookings. Made a lot of sense, as Brookings was also looking to explore how we can tell the story of economic trends in this region and the impacts that we're seeing. So we partnered with Brookings, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Dr. Tracy Haddon-Lowe. And at this point, I would just like to turn it over to Tracy and talk a little bit more about the DMV monitor.
And I think we've got some slides, which hopefully we can pull up for you guys. While we're getting those slides up, I just want to say hi. I know that many of you may know me from my regional role on the board of WMATA, and so it may be particularly weird for us to be in this room, and I'm just not here to talk about that at all. That's my side hustle. My main hustle is making PDFs. And I'm so happy that I can share a PDF that the team at COG helped me make today. So we've started a project with COG called the DMV Monitor, which is basically, it's inspired by another project we have at Brookings called the Metro Monitor, that is a scan of hundreds of metro areas around the country, basically like taking, national annual economic and demographic data, and then disaggregating it for different metro areas, essentially like a comparative research approach. Like how is my region doing compared to peer regions? So we are taking the same approach with the DMV Monitor, but we're trying to increase the tempo with which we're doing analyses, because we all know that with the start of the Trump administration that the economy of our region is being transformed in a variety of ways by federal actions. I'm gonna try to use this thing to advance the slides, but that first click was not promising. So I don't think can I say next slide? Okay, amazing, I can say next slide. Okay, so we know actually that the economy of the entire country is being transformed, and that these are not one-time disruptions, that many of these transformations are being codified into law. And so buckle up, because this is the beginning of a ride that could last, for example, the rest of my career. Next slide. Of course, the impacts are nationwide, but they're also uniquely and disproportionately affecting our region. These are fun facts about our region that you guys all already know, since you're the experts. This is just in here for anyone else who might be looking at the deck later. Next slide. So what the DMV Monitor is all about is increasing the cadence of analysis to kind of try to get quarterly or even more frequent updates. So rather than waiting a whole year to find out what happened to our regional economy, let's learn what we can right now, not just from the publicly available data that's out there, but also let's just go ahead and look at the business intelligence data sources that the private sector is looking at, so that we can maybe even catalyze like a cross-sector response. Get all on the same page, see the same facts, that get visibility into the facts that other sectors are looking at. And so with the DMV Monitor, we are using traditional public sector data, but we're also using a bunch of private data that we are buying. And don't laugh, it turns out that COG's procurement process is actually faster than Brookings. And so COG has been a great partner in just helping us even figure out how to go about this work, and just keeping me in the good graces of my general counsel. And so I just want to thank COG for that partnership. Next slide. Okay, what did we learn? I'm just going to show you guys a few graphs, and then let's just jump into discussion. It's not good is where we're at. So I want to emphasize that, many of you, this may be a little confusing because like a national jobs report just came out. The regional data takes longer to be released. But if we do look at the national jobs data, we know that actually like the country is still, like job growth is positive nationwide. That is not the case for our region. Across all sectors, our region is losing jobs. And in fact, last year, our region lost more jobs than any other major metro area in the United States. We all know that federal employment is a big part of this story. And so what we see in the graph on the right is that while the federal government is the nation's largest employer, we know, of course, our region has disproportionate exposure there. And in fact, we have lost more, a bigger share of federal jobs than other major metro areas and the country as a whole. And this is because of essentially kind of which agencies and which, occupations are, being targeted, whether that's by cuts or, buyouts, et cetera. Next slide. But this is not just about what's happening to the federal government. So on the left here, I'm showing WARN notices, and y'all may already be familiar with these. Those only come from the private sector. Okay, the US government does not have to issue a WARN notice before it lays off a whole bunch of people. And so there are real impacts in our private sector. This is not just about, who is directly employed by the federal government. And this is not, I want to emphasize, just about job loss in the private sector, but also slowing job growth. Because some sectors of the economy are shedding jobs, but others are adding jobs. The issue is that our growth is not keeping up with our rate of loss, and so that's why we're ending up with a negative net situation in terms of jobs. Next slide. As a result, unemployment has surged. And while unemployment is slightly up nationwide, it is up. The increase in unemployment in our region is, more than double what's happening in the country as a whole. It's more than triple what's happening in the country and more than double what's happening in major metro areas. Next slide. And the other thing we're doing with the DMV monitor is trying to provide visibility for local government leaders throughout the region about what's happening in your jurisdiction. So we understand that we're one regional economy, and it's important to understand the regional trend and how that compares to other regions. But we also want to give visibility to what's happening inside the region. And so what we're seeing is that as of the end of 2025 and the close of the federal fiscal year, that residents of the district and the Maryland counties that are in our region have seen the biggest increase in unemployment, and that's where kind of once we got past the fork, that's where job loss was concentrated. In the earlier part of the year, actually, the increases in employment were higher in the Virginia suburbs, and so that is just emphasizing to me why it's so important that this be a real-time monitoring project, because we're seeing this isn't like a one-time, the job loss has happened, okay, what's next? Because this is ongoing, this is where the cumulative impact is at right now, but we don't know where it might be next. And so, that's why we're trying to put out continuous updates, and this is not just a PDF, it's also an interactive website where you can go and look up your jurisdiction for any indicator and see what's happening. Next slide. But in addition to trying to give some insight into what's happening geographically, we're also breaking down what's happening in our region demographically. And unsurprisingly, there is a hugely disparate racial impact in terms of who is being impacted by job loss. We did not see this disparate impact in the first half of the year, but as time goes on and people are unemployed for longer, what we're seeing in the data is that re-entry into the job market, workers of all racial groups are not having the same experience. And so as 2025 has gone on, the gap in the increase in unemployment for Black workers and white workers, that gap has widened dramatically and is now the gap is for Black workers more than double the increase in unemployment for white workers. Next slide. Like I said, there are impacts on the private sector. And even those impacts, though, there are disparities within those impacts. So, while the country as a whole is still adding jobs, and there are job vacancies, including in the federal government, available to be filled in our region, one thing we're seeing is that internships are down a little bit nationwide, but a lot in our region. And so our region's role as a place where young people who want to change the world come to find their first opportunity is, we are abdicating that role with what we're seeing happening in the private job posting data that we've been able to peek into due to the unique data approach we're taking on this project. Next slide. And, in terms of job growth, another concern about the kind of just the greater uncertainty that there is in the economy is that it's having a very negative impact on venture capital flows to startups that are located specifically in the DMV. While venture capital flow is positive nationwide and in fact growing, venture capital flow is down 25% to startups that are located in our region. And so this is just particularly alarming because it shows our region really deviating from the trend that's otherwise happening in the region as a whole. Analysis by my colleagues at Brookings shows that the DMV is an AI superstar market with all of the right raw ingredients to be leaning into the new AI economy and creating a lot of new products and a lot of new jobs. But that is not going to happen. The raw ingredients aren't going to turn into the meal without one more ingredient, which is venture capital and seed funding for these startups. And so I am very concerned about this graph in particular. Next slide. We are the data just get worse every month for the visitor economy in our region. Every time I update this graph, the gap between the trend in the country as a whole and our region is getting bigger. And so this is another indicator to keep an eye on because we know how important these revenues are. But also, the hospitality sector is like one of the few sectors in the DMV that's adding jobs. And so it's just going to be another problem for our region if this trend keeps going in the direction it's going. And so this is another one we're watching closely. And this is another insight that we're able to provide by using private sector data, which just gives us more angles to understand what's happening in the economy. Next slide. So, I think the big question we all have is, are workers leaving? And what we're seeing is there is huge churn in active residential for sale listings in the DMV. In the third quarter, in the fall, kind of high home sale season, we had a bigger increase in home sale listings than any other region in the country. Next slide. Updating as of the end of this year, getting closer to the end of 2025. At this point, Charlotte and Vegas do have bigger increases in sales than us, but I think that just speaks to how, kind of relatively how our winter market is slower than the winter, kind of logically slower than the winter market in Charlotte or Vegas. And so you can see here that the increase in home sales is concentrated in our suburban jurisdictions. And so there is a big disconnect between the trend in the district and then the trend in surrounding counties. We are still trying to figure out where people are going. I'm not sure we're going to be able to figure it out, but we're going to try. Next slide. The final private data set that we're taking a look at is a data set of credit card spending by where we can disaggregate by the billing zip code of the spender. And we're looking only at credit card spending at physical businesses that are actually located in the DMV. And so what we've seen is that while there was a nationwide trend of what was called revenge spending after the pandemic, basically spending went way up in 2021 and 2022, as stuff reopened. We would expect to see a decline in spending because you can't revenge spend forever. I mean, I wish. It sounds really fun, but you can't do that. So the revenge spend is kind of wearing off. But my concern is that as we look at 2025, we see another decline. There was the plateau after the revenge spend is turning into another decline as the Trump administration's policies are, I think producing kind of in the macro, a suppressing effect on consumer spending, which is a huge chunk of the overall economy. Next slide. So, I am very concerned by the trends that I see in these data. And so I think I have accomplished bullet number 1, which is to inform. But these are just graphs unless we come together and act. And so I am eager to connect, not just during this meeting with you all, but on an ongoing basis. Next slide. Please be in touch about how we can work together. I thought talentcapital.ai was a really cool example. We have data on our website that's available to you on a rolling basis. These are not one-time graphs. Next slide. But I hope you'll use my contact information here so that I can share everything that we've got, not just this selection of graphs that I dumped into this presentation. I'm happy to prepare a more detailed briefing for you, for your teams, because we need to not just get informed, but then also start talking about what we're going to do about this. Because I think even more, secondary and tertiary impacts are coming. And, frankly, the longer job growth is negative, or stagnant, the bigger a problem this is going to become over time. Thank you.
So I think your message was very clear. And I don't know how anyone could not have understood what you were saying. So we do have a few questions. I wanted to start with Ms. Randall, and I see Mr. Lusk has his hand up, and I'll just go across the room, Ms. Randall.
So I'll be really quick. First of all, Tracy, Dr. It's always great to see you, and you and I can get together.
Please call me Tracy.
Tracy, you and I get together and go out to lunch and go shopping and solve all these problems if you want to. We can just do that. So sometimes when you all, Brookings, your information is sometimes available to put out for everyone to have, and sometimes you've said to me before, let's hold it for a little while until I get some of these numbers worked out. Let me know if this.
This deck is not ready to go.
It's
I'm
not
still
ready to go.
having that. We have a
Okay.
quality review process.
Okay.
That COG is a part of,
All
and that I need to.
I'm glad I asked.
We are shooting to have this deck ready for final public consumption within a month.
Okay.
But we do need
I'm
to go
glad I
through that
asked. I'm glad
and
I
by
asked.
then we'll
Okay.
also be able to add
All right.
December, which
All
will be
right.
a plus.
I'm glad I asked, because I was, that's great, good answer. When you do get the stack ready, would you be willing to come to localities and give this presentation to localities? That would be really helpful.
Yes, I mean, obviously, if Metro Rail goes there, that's better for me.
Metro
but
Rail goes there,
but
baby. I'll
I
pick
can
you up at the
find a
Silver
way to
Line.
get there no matter what.
No, I will. No, I will.
I spent all of December running around the region, going to every board meeting I could think of, presenting the findings that we had up till then. But where I have not connected as much is with COG's membership.
Yeah.
And so your Chamber of Commerce has already seen this if you're at this table, but I would love to show it to you too. And I mean, what is missing for me is like a sense of like collective urgency.
Sure.
I mean, I like shake with fear when I look at these graphs. This is not good.
I'll get your information. I think I have your information already, but I'll make sure I get it and set you someplace on our agenda within the next couple of months. Thank you, ma'am. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much for the presentation as well. I'll say I have a similar request. I would love to spend some time with you to go through the slides, and specifically the slide that's on venture capital. I think what you've hit there is something that's pretty important. So as we think about investment coming into this region, I think in Fairfax County, we're projecting to have close to about $1 billion coming in our next quarter. However, the point that you've made is that the earlier stage companies, the startup companies, are the companies that are not receiving the funding. And just yesterday, I brought up this very same point at our meeting because I'm concerned about the very point you've raised. So what do we need to do as a region? This is not just a Fairfax County problem, it's a problem for the region, and how do we gain and garner more venture capital investment in the earlier stages to help seed the innovation and the new company formation that's going to help us create the jobs that we need to replace all these federal government jobs that have gone away.
Yeah, and especially, I think investing in young people and their ideas, it's kind of a bigger picture problem that I think that data element speaks to, but others as well.
Yes. But we'll look forward to following up as well. So thank you.
Mr. Wolfley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. Greatly appreciate the insights. Two really quick questions for you. Do you see any hope from the layoffs turning into contractor work? I know that as a former Fed myself, that the work doesn't go away. It still needs to get done, and a lot of the mindset is that at some point in time, there's going to be a flip where we see more contract work coming back to replace the employees. Any signs of that or any hope for that?
I think that if you look at historical trends, you hope for that because that is exactly what happened the last two times, right? If we think back to, I'm like dating myself age-wise, but remember reinventing government
Oh, yeah.
and like getting rid of all the paper, or like remember sequestration, right? Our region has been through this before where we've shed very significant numbers of federal jobs. And in fact, those were replaced by contractor jobs. I think the issue is that we have a lot of really direct statements from this administration that indicate that they have no plan for the future to be like the past. So, you know, I am, and also, I don't see it in the data. Our private sector is not adding jobs. So I have a different graph that will be forthcoming in the publication for this, but basically like the country is adding jobs, major metro areas are adding jobs. Our net job change from November 2024 to November 2025 as a region is 0.00%. I would have to add more digits to find something that wasn't a zero.
Interesting, thank you. And then the following question is a follow-up on the housing numbers that you presented. To me, when I see housing sales going up, there's a buyer and a seller, so that doesn't bother me too much.
Yeah.
Except, how long are these houses on the market? That to me suggests there's an imbalance between those wanting to leave and those coming in, and perhaps even price effect.
So if you look at the Monitor website, we have a more expansive panel of housing indicators that is tracking time on market. Actually, I don't think we have time on market, but we do have price. I've looked at the time on market data and haven't seen a sign that that there's no demand for housing. But prices are down, and they're down more than the national trend, and asking rents are also down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Karantanis.
I'm doing every month at our board meeting. My reports are only on employment, so it's like a series. Last month was talent capital on the docket. So I represent the dismal science and I do the dismal reporting. So two things. First of all, on contractors, I mean, I can report to you in Arlington, we obviously monitor it very closely. This is a volume of $34 billion worth of contracts that evaporated last year. Our friends in Fairfax know that because Booz Allen just gave them a notice, among others. So we are dealing with a federal government who couldn't care less about the job, as we understood, or at least as I understand it. And it is, allow me to say, probably corrupt enough to move these functions to completely different entities than, entities that help or do the job through governmental means, even if these are outsourced. So I don't have a lot of expectations. There are two things. First of all, there is a parameter that's extremely important. In Northern Virginia, $1 out of $4 invested in Northern Virginia comes from outside the United States. I would like to see where this is because there is a lot of demolition work going on in our international relations, and the same way we may lose confidence for venture capital investors, we may lose confidence also with other investors. So that produces a lot of jobs, and I'm really concerned about this tanking, with no possibility to come back. The second thing is, I mean, the local governments are moving their economy as well. So we invest actually, and we employ people. We create, virtuous circles. Until now, I have had a very weak understanding of what our part in this is? What is, we need to make some decisions on how to invest in our own economies. For example, how are we moving our housing dollars? How are we moving our, other service dollars? We are not, we cannot act like a Keynesian actor here, but we probably can emulate some of the aspects of that, like counterbalancing, etc. So I would be very interested to dive deeper on the role that we have on this, as in how it directly, converts into investment, jobs, etc. The second thing is one of the moving ideas behind talent capital is to try to retain talent here in the sectors that you have seen out, net out migration, which we have been seeing before, by the way, because of other factors like the cost of housing. And so maybe this is a point where now the additional crisis or the additional quasi-recessionary movement of indicators here should, inform us to make it more aggressive in, lifting barriers there and making it worth to stay for other reasons. So these are the two things where I really, for investment and local government, impact on employment and local economies in specific terms.
So, I think I want to be respectful of everyone's time and not launch this into a huge discussion right now, but I will say that ULI asked me to moderate a panel with the economic development leads who work for you, from jurisdictions across the region. We had 5 of them, and I moderated the panel. And we were discussing, well, okay, what can we do, right? To your point about government's not going to directly create jobs per se. I just want to be clear that the professionals who work for you, who you were paying to do this, they have very specific ideas and very strong opinions about things they feel local government is not doing, but should be doing in order to attract and retain jobs in the region. One thing that did surprise me from that panel discussion was that unanimously across DC and suburban jurisdictions alike, all of these professionals said that the #1 barrier to job growth in the region is housing. And, so I understand that there's, now we're kind of getting into the complex web and one thing is, it may not be clear how that directly plugs into the socket, but that's what the professionals had to say. And I think that we should be acting with urgency to make our region more attractive to employers, because for the residents who are already here. And so, since they're already here and presumably living in housing of some kind, we might think, hey, does that mean that I don't need any more? But no, I think we do. We have to loosen up the housing market in this region significantly more in order to attract these new jobs, which our incumbent current residents need.
So I wanted to give Mr.
We have to double
Madaleno
down.
an opportunity because we're getting short on time. So
Thank you. I'll try to be very quick. So on some of your initial slides, the difference between total job loss and whether or not it includes people who are in the defense or secret or intelligence agencies, because that's seemingly always hard to figure out what's happening with those numbers, because the federal government doesn't report in the same way as they do civilian jobs. Or am I wrong?
No, that's correct. These are civilian jobs.
For those of us who have large
Correct.
defense and intelligence, it makes it so much more
It really
confusing.
does. Yeah, it's a
You see how
real wrinkle
confusing it was?
factor.
I just fell off the edge.
Yeah.
So, and then the other question, and obviously Maryland is unique in the states that we have both a state income tax and every county must have a local income tax. So we're getting a lot of tax revenue off of income. And when you look at the state, I know Virginia should have the same thing. I will happily go to Richmond. I will happily go to Richmond and lobby. We should have a lobbyist in Richmond to do that. So, the state of Maryland is reporting robust wage and salary withholding growth in income tax revenue from withholding. And something is missing, because I remember someone once said to me, and again, I'm veering into revenue forecasting. Revenue forecasting is like driving a car by only looking in the rearview mirror. You're only making judgments by what you experience, by not what's happening. Employment numbers are all going one way, and tax revenues for the state of Maryland are going in a different direction. And something different is happening that I don't know if the numbers are capturing. I remember Dr. Fuller one time saying the BLS doesn't capture data for so many people who might be doing high-end gig work, sole proprietorships, and is something fundamentally changing in all of our regional economy, local economy, that the numbers don't match what we're seeing, and how you can help reconcile that for all of us moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My general sense is just that, no one knew until very, very recently how big the fork was, right? We didn't know how many workers took it, and specifically anything about whether they're located in the DMV. These are the first data that I have seen that reflect what happened with this is brand new, hot off the BLS press, that we now know that there was a very large employment impact on the fork in our data. Because everyone who took the fork got paid through the end of the federal fiscal year, I do not expect to see an impact to income tax revenue until Q1 2026. And I don't think anyone has that information on their books yet. So make sure you're sitting down when you get that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. I would suspect that there will be follow-ups to this presentation as we move forward. As was stated, agenda item 9 will be placed on our March agenda. And so with that, I'll start and ask, are there any additional business before the board at this time that you'd like presented? Okay. Well then, I'd like to adjourn our meeting for today and remind you that our next meeting is on Wednesday, March 11th, and it'll be back at the National Association of Counties building. So with that, everyone have a great evening, and thank you.